reports that Meghan Markle had been dropped by her Hollywood agency WME, but an industry insider claimed that Meghan Markle...
The call ended abruptly, not with anger but with something colder: finality. In Los Angeles, a small circle of agents and publicists began whispering that a door had closed, not quietly, but deliberately. At the center of the fallout was Meghan Markle. The man said to have closed that door was Brad Pitt, and before the story could be contained, another name was pulled into the narrative, unexpectedly and uninvited: Jennifer Aniston. What began as a rumored outreach for collaboration, according to people who claim knowledge of the exchange, escalated into a reputational standoff that rippled through Hollywood and royal-adjacent circles alike. Phones stopped returning calls. Meetings were canceled. And what followed was not a public feud, but a quiet industry freeze that spoke louder than any headline. Join us as we examine how an alleged rejection turned personal, why Hollywood closed ranks, and how a single refusal may have triggered an explosive chain reaction that Meghan did not see coming.
It's interesting when you're looking at what Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are up to. Meanwhile, King Charles and Queen Camilla have been filmed packing dates that will be sent to hospitals as they...
In Los Angeles, rejection rarely comes in the form of a hard no. It arrives as a delay, as silence, as a meeting that never quite gets scheduled. That is why the response that reached Meghan Markle's team felt so jarring. According to people familiar with the exchange, Brad Pitt's representative's answer was unusually direct. No interest. No follow-up. No invitation to revisit the idea later. The outreach itself had been framed as exploratory. Meghan's advisors, working out of offices near Sunset Boulevard, believed there was a narrow window for prestige collaboration, something that could reposition her in Hollywood as serious, selective, and above celebrity noise. Pitt's name carried weight precisely because he was known for refusing most offers. Securing even a conversation would have signaled validation. That conversation, sources say, never happened.
Then Gabriella, Harry the hypocrite, and his wife went to Hollywood, hired 3 PR agencies, and look at almost everything they've done. It's been hypocritical.
Yeah.
Inside the agency that handled the inquiry, the mood shifted quickly. Assistants noticed senior partners closing doors. Calendars were cleared. A message circulated internally, advising caution in how the situation was discussed. The antagonist at this early stage was not Pitt himself, but finality. In an industry built on ambiguity, finality is a warning sign. Meghan learned of the response late afternoon. According to people briefed on the call, she pressed for clarification, asking whether the refusal was about timing, content, or optics. The answer she received was blunt. Pitt was not interested in being associated with projects that risked pulling him into public controversy. The wording stung because it suggested not just rejection, but assessment. Her reaction, described by multiple insiders, was immediate and emotional. Frustration surfaced first, then anger. She challenged the premise, arguing that her work had been mischaracterized and that she had been unfairly labeled as volatile by people who had never met her. Advisors attempted to de-escalate, reminding her that Hollywood decisions often have little to do with personal judgment. That explanation did not land. The refusal traveled fast. By evening, word had reached other agencies, not as gossip, but as guidance. Pitt's camp was not open. More importantly, it had drawn a line. In Los Angeles, when a figure of Pitt's stature draws a line, others take note. The consequence is rarely public. It is logistical. Calls slow. Enthusiasm cools. Across the Atlantic, palace watchers picked up on the shift in tone. While the monarchy had no role in Hollywood negotiations, senior aides still monitored Meghan's profile as it evolved. A former royal communications advisor noted that each high-profile rejection reinforced a narrative the palace had long worried about: unpredictability. Inside royal circles, unpredictability is treated as risk. The palace itself was divided on how much any of this mattered. One faction dismissed Hollywood drama as irrelevant to royal protocol. Another argued that Meghan's visibility in American media inevitably reflected back on the institution, particularly when headlines grew sharper. The disagreement was not emotional, it was strategic. Distance protects. Association exposes. Back in Los Angeles, Meghan's advisors convened a late-night call. They debated the next steps. Some argued for immediate counter-programming, a new announcement that would shift attention. Others warned that reacting too quickly would confirm instability. The antagonist had become perception. Every move would now be read through the lens of rejection. Brad Pitt remained silent. He did not comment. He did not leak. His absence from the conversation only increased its weight. In Hollywood, silence from powerful men is often interpreted as confidence. It allows others to speak on their behalf without contradiction. By the next morning, entertainment reporters were calling Meghan's team, asking whether talks had ever taken place. The question itself was a trap. Confirming talks suggested rejection. Denying them suggested embarrassment. Meghan chose not to respond publicly. Privately, her frustration deepened. Those close to her described a sense of being cornered by narratives she could not control. She had left the palace, she believed, to escape rigid hierarchies. Yet here she was, confronting a different system with its own unspoken rules and punishments. The situation escalated when another name entered the conversation. In private exchanges between agents, Jennifer Aniston was mentioned as a point of reference. Not because she had said anything, but because of her history, her proximity to Pitt, and her reputation for staying clear of controversy. The implication, according to people who heard the chatter, was that Pitt's inner circle was particularly sensitive to optics, tied to female narratives and media cycles. That implication angered Meghan further. She rejected the idea that another woman's reputation could be used, even indirectly, to justify her exclusion. Advisors urged restraint. Aniston had not spoken. Dragging her into the story would only expand the fallout. Meghan agreed reluctantly, but the damage was already spreading. By midweek, the industry freeze became noticeable. Invitations paused. Introductions were delayed. A producer who had expressed interest weeks earlier went quiet. None of this was overt. That is how Hollywood operates. Doors close softly, but they close all the same. The palace divide sharpened as reports filtered back to London. One senior aide argued that this was exactly the kind of spiral the monarchy had tried to manage internally. Another countered that Meghan was now operating in a world the palace neither controlled nor influenced. The debate ended without resolution. Observation, not intervention, was chosen. Meghan's emotional state fluctuated. Those close to her described moments of defiance followed by exhaustion. She questioned whether Pitt's refusal had been influenced by palace whispering. There was no evidence of that, but suspicion filled the gap where clarity was absent. In crisis, speculation feels like agency. By the end of the week, one fact was clear. Brad Pitt's refusal had done more than close a door. It had signaled to Hollywood how to treat the situation. Meghan had not been publicly criticized. She had been quietly sidelined. And in industries governed by access rather than announcements, that distinction makes all the difference. The fallout was only beginning. By the next morning, the refusal had stopped being a private decision and had become a signal. In Hollywood, the most powerful messages are not delivered through press releases, but through behavior. Brad Pitt did not return calls. His agents did not offer alternatives. The silence communicated something more consequential than a polite decline. It suggested a boundary. Inside Meghan's Los Angeles team, the temperature rose. Advisors compared notes, trying to determine whether Pitt's response was isolated or symptomatic. They tracked calendars, checked introductions that had gone cold, and reviewed conversations that now felt suddenly fragile. The antagonist had shifted. It was no longer Pitt's refusal. It was everyone else's interpretation. Meghan Markle reacted sharply when she realized how quickly the message had traveled. According to people briefed on her calls that day, she argued that the refusal was being exaggerated into a judgment. She wanted to know who was feeding the narrative that she was high risk. Advisors cautioned that no one needed to feed it. The industry fills in blanks on its own. Meetings that had been tentatively discussed were postponed without explanation. One studio executive cited scheduling conflicts. Another asked to revisit later in the year. The pattern was unmistakable. In Hollywood, when several unrelated parties begin speaking the same language, it is rarely a coincidence. Pitt's camp had drawn a line, and others were choosing not to cross it. The palace divide sharpened quietly in London. While the monarchy had no role in Hollywood negotiations, senior aides still assessed reputational spillover. One faction dismissed the situation as an American industry squabble, with no bearing on royal interests. Another warned that repeated narratives about instability, even outside royal life, eventually circle back. The disagreement mirrored earlier tensions. Distance protects, visibility exposes. Meghan's frustration spilled into strategy discussions. She pushed for a proactive move, something that would reset the conversation and reclaim control. A new announcement: a philanthropic partnership. A high-profile appearance. Advisors urged caution. Reacting too visibly to rejection, they warned, could reinforce the very perception they were trying to counter. The argument grew heated. Meghan felt boxed in by advice that sounded like retreat. The refusal took on added weight because of Pitt's reputation. He is known for declining far more than he accepts, but when he declines, it is usually with warmth and ambiguity. This time, sources say, the tone was final. No creative notes, no timing caveats. That finality was read as risk management. Pitt's brand is built on selective distance from controversy. Aligning with someone whose name triggered polarized reactions offered no upside.
People keep asking me about their branding, and I say a brand needs to be authentic. For example, this whole new show that she has about this jam. Gabriella, is there anyone in...
As the day progressed, a familiar Hollywood mechanism activated. Informal lists, quiet warnings, agents advising clients to wait and see. No one framed it as punishment, it was positioning. The antagonist here was not a person, but consensus forming in real time. By late afternoon, Jennifer Aniston's name surfaced more clearly in private exchanges. Not because she had spoken, but because of what she represented. Stability, privacy, a refusal to be drawn into spectacle. According to people who heard the conversations, Pitt's inner circle was described as especially protective of that image. Any project that risked reopening old media cycles was viewed as unnecessary exposure. Meghan bristled at the implication. She rejected the idea that another woman's reputation could be used as a measuring stick for her own. Those close to her said she felt reduced to a headline rather than assessed on merit. Advisors urged restraint. Aniston had not commented. Dragging her into the situation would only expand the blast radius.
Australia, and I covered this for Fox Business here in the US, her bullying reputation follows her everywhere she goes, Gabriella.
Yes, absolutely.
The palace factions watched this development with interest. One aide noted that Hollywood was now doing what the palace had once tried to do internally: impose limits through access rather than confrontation. Another cautioned against drawing parallels. The contexts were different, even if the mechanisms looked similar. By evening, Meghan's team shifted into containment mode. They advised partners to avoid confirming or denying any outreach. Silence, they argued, would prevent the story from crystallizing. The problem was that silence now belonged to Pitt. When one side controls quiet, the other appears evasive. Meghan's emotional state grew more volatile. Friends described moments of anger followed by exhaustion. She questioned whether Pitt's refusal had been influenced by whispers from Britain. There was no evidence of that, but suspicion filled the vacuum left by unanswered questions. In high-pressure environments, speculation feels like explanation. Harry remained largely out of the conversation, but palace observers noted his absence. Some interpreted it as strategic distance. Others saw it as marginalization. Either way, Meghan felt increasingly alone in managing a narrative that was slipping beyond her reach. Late that night, a producer who had once expressed interest sent a brief message. They admired her work, the note said, but felt now was not the right moment. The phrase was familiar. It confirmed what Meghan already suspected. Pitt's refusal had become a proxy for broader industry hesitation. The stakes had escalated. This was no longer about one collaboration. It was about access, about whether Hollywood viewed Meghan as an asset or a complication. The antagonist had fully formed. It was the collective judgment of an industry that rarely explains itself and never apologizes. By the end of the day, the message was unmistakable. When a powerful no lands in Hollywood, it does not stop at one door. It becomes guidance. And once guidance spreads, reversing it requires more than talent or ambition. It requires time, patience, and silence from the very people who benefit most from speaking. The moment Jennifer Aniston's name surfaced, the situation shifted from industry hesitation to reputational hazard. She had not spoken. She had not been approached. Yet within agency corridors and producer group chats, her presence became a shorthand explanation for why lines were being drawn so firmly. Not because she was involved, but because she symbolized something Hollywood protects at all costs: stability without spectacle. The linkage was indirect but persistent. According to people who heard the conversations, the reasoning went like this. Brad Pitt had spent years rebuilding a public image defined by discipline and privacy. Any association that risked reviving tabloid cycles or triangulating him through old narratives was treated as unnecessary exposure. Aniston's reputation for avoiding public conflict amplified that instinct. The conclusion, never stated publicly, was that discretion required distance. Meghan felt the implication immediately. Meghan Markle rejected the idea that her presence alone constituted risk. She argued to advisors that the narrative was being shaped by assumptions, not facts, and that those assumptions were rooted in stereotypes she had faced before. Her frustration sharpened when she realized the conversation was happening without her, defined by people who had no incentive to correct it. Hollywood's mechanisms moved quietly but decisively. A publicist who had been enthusiastic weeks earlier suddenly required legal review before any mention of collaboration. A charity gala guest list was revised. Introductions softened. None of it was dramatic. That is precisely how reputations are managed. The antagonist was not Aniston, who remained silent, but the idea of her, an idea powerful enough to redirect behavior without her lifting a finger. Across the Atlantic, palace observers noticed the parallel. Inside royal households, reputational risk is managed through protocol and omission. In Hollywood, it is managed through access and silence. A former palace advisor remarked privately that Meghan was now facing the same system she had left, only without formal protections. The palace, divided as ever, watched rather than intervened. One faction in London believed the Hollywood freeze confirmed long-standing concerns about volatility. Another argued that the industry's reaction was disproportionate and unfair. The debate was academic. The monarchy was not positioned to influence American entertainment decisions, and any attempt to do so would invite scrutiny it could not afford. Observation remained the chosen posture. In Los Angeles, Meghan's team debated whether to address the Aniston angle directly. Some argued that a firm denial, making clear there was no conflict, could neutralize speculation. Others warned that naming Aniston would escalate the story and force a response from someone who had done nothing wrong. The risk calculus favored restraint. Silence, again, became the default, even as it ceded narrative ground. Meghan's personal reaction intensified. Friends described a sense of being boxed in by other people's comfort zones. She questioned why her ambitions were treated as liabilities, while others' boundaries were treated as virtues. The comparison stung. It suggested a hierarchy she could not penetrate, no matter her profile or effort. The media began connecting dots. Entertainment segments spoke carefully, using phrases like "sources say" and "industry insiders suggest." No one alleged wrongdoing. They did not need to. The story was about alignment and exclusion, about who gets invited into the inner circle and who is politely kept at arm's length. Aniston's continued silence only reinforced the impression that distance was intentional and effective. Brad Pitt's camp remained unmoved, no clarification, no outreach. His silence functioned as containment. In Hollywood, powerful figures often allow narratives to resolve themselves through inaction. The absence of correction is interpreted as confidence. The message settled further into place. Meghan attempted to pivot. Advisors suggested focusing on existing projects, doubling down on work already underway. The idea was to demonstrate steadiness and dilute the narrative of unpredictability. It was sound advice, but the timing was unforgiving. Any move risked being read as reaction. Any stillness risked being read as retreat. The palace divide mirrored this tension. One aide noted that Meghan was experiencing what the monarchy calls managed distance, a process by which institutions protect themselves without confrontation. Another worried that the optics, particularly the involvement of a female figure like Aniston as an implied benchmark, played into familiar and damaging patterns. The concern was noted, then set aside. The palace had no lever to pull here. By the end of the week, the industry freeze was no longer speculative. It was observable. Calls slowed. Responses shortened. Projects that required consensus stalled. Meghan's circle tightened, comprised of those willing to withstand turbulence. The rest stepped back, not out of hostility, but caution. Aniston continued to do what she had always done. Nothing. Her absence from the conversation was, paradoxically, the most powerful factor. It allowed others to project values onto her without resistance. values that favored quiet, predictability, and distance from controversy. In contrast, Meghan was left contending with a narrative she did not author. The stakes were now clear. This was not a feud, it was a sorting. Hollywood deciding where to place risk. Meghan recognizing that rejection, once framed as prudence by others, becomes self-reinforcing. The antagonist was consensus, forming without votes or declarations. As the weekend approached, one senior agent summarized the situation bluntly in a private message. "This is not about talent, it is about comfort. Comfort with silence, comfort with predictability, comfort with who is already inside the room." Meghan read that message and understood what the fallout had become. Brad Pitt had shut the door, Jennifer Aniston's shadow had widened the hallway, and Hollywood, efficient and unsentimental, had begun closing ranks. By the following Monday, the industry had made its choice without ever voting. No statements were issued, no meetings were formally canceled, yet the result was unmistakable. Access narrowed, invitations softened, momentum stalled. In Hollywood, this is how conclusions are reached, quietly, collectively, and without appeal. Brad Pitt remained absent from the conversation. He did not clarify his refusal. He did not rebut interpretations circulating in his name. That restraint carried authority. Those who know his operating style understood it as deliberate. Pitt has long avoided public disputes, preferring distance over damage control. By saying nothing, he allowed the narrative to stabilize around him, not around the controversy. For Meghan Markle, the effect was cumulative. The initial rejection had been frustrating. The second-order consequences were destabilizing. Projects that required consensus hesitated. Partners asked for time. Advisors began speaking in longer horizons, urging patience rather than pushback. The message was subtle but firm. The industry wanted calm, not confrontation. The antagonist, now fully visible, was not Pitt or Jennifer Aniston. It was alignment. Hollywood had aligned itself around a preference for predictability, and Meghan's name had become associated with uncertainty, fairly or not. Once that association takes hold, it is difficult to dislodge because it does not rely on evidence. It relies on comfort. Aniston's continued silence reinforced the outcome. She did not need to distance herself publicly because the industry did it for her. Her reputation for discretion and emotional restraint became a quiet benchmark, not as a comparison she invited, but as one others imposed. The contrast, however unfair, shaped behavior. Invitations flowed where risk felt minimal. They paused where questions lingered. Meghan's response evolved. The anger that had flared earlier receded into something more controlled. Those close to her described a recalibration. She stopped trying to correct the narrative and began focusing on endurance. The shift was pragmatic. In Hollywood, time is often the only counterweight to consensus. The palace, watching from afar, recognized the pattern. Though it had no role in the fallout, senior aides noted the similarity to royal containment strategies. Limit engagement, avoid amplification, allow systems to self-regulate. One former courtier remarked privately that Meghan was now facing institutional logic without institutional shelter. Outside the palace, silence does not protect, it exposes. Harry's position remained peripheral. He was not central to the Hollywood conversations, and his absence was telling. Some interpreted it as strategic distance, others as marginalization. For Meghan, it underscored the isolation of the moment. This was her reputation being weighed, her access recalibrated, her future negotiated by people she could not confront directly. By midweek, the media tone shifted again. Headlines softened. Speculation cooled. Not because the story had resolved, but because there was nothing new to say. The industry freeze had become the story, and freezes are rarely dramatic. They are slow, procedural, and hard to reverse. Meghan returned to limited public appearances, carefully curated and tightly controlled. No interviews, no commentary on Hollywood dynamics. Advisors emphasized steadiness. The goal was not to win the moment, but to survive it. Every appearance was measured against a single question. Does this lower the temperature or raise it? Brad Pitt's camp continued to do nothing, and that nothing worked. In the absence of contradiction, the interpretation of his refusal settled into accepted wisdom. He had drawn a boundary. Others respected it. The system moved on. Jennifer Aniston remained untouched by the fallout, which in itself became instructive. Her ability to remain outside the storm reinforced the very qualities the industry prized: privacy, predictability, non-engagement. By contrast, Meghan's attempts to assert agency were read as volatility, a judgment rooted more in pattern recognition than fact. Inside Meghan's circle, the emotional toll surfaced quietly. Friends described moments of self-doubt followed by resolve. She questioned whether leaving royal structures had truly liberated her, or simply exchanged one set of constraints for another. In Hollywood, power is diffuse but unforgiving. There are no titles to fall back on, only access. The palace factions reached their own conclusion. This episode confirmed what some had long argued. Institutions survive by limiting exposure. Individuals absorb the cost. It was not a moral judgment. It was an operational one. The monarchy moved on. Hollywood had already done so. By the end of the month, the fallout had settled into background reality. Meghan was not cancelled. She was not embraced. She occupied a narrower lane, one defined by caution rather than opportunity. That narrowing was the real consequence of the rejection, not humiliation, but constraint. The story never produced a confrontation. There was no public feud, no dramatic exchange of words. Instead, there was alignment, an industry deciding what it would tolerate and what it would quietly set aside. Brad Pitt shut the door. Jennifer Aniston's distance widened the gap. And Hollywood, efficient and unsentimental, closed ranks. For Meghan, the lesson was stark. In systems governed by access, silence is power. Those who control it shape outcomes. Those who challenge it risk exclusion. The fallout did not destroy her. It recalibrated her. And in worlds where image is currency, recalibration can be as consequential as rejection. The door did not slam. It closed softly. And that, in Hollywood, is how decisions become permanent. In Hollywood and royalty alike, power is rarely exercised loudly. It moves through silence, access, and who chooses not to return the call. If you want more investigations into the forces shaping celebrity influence behind closed doors, subscribe, share your thoughts, and join us for the next story.